Hello everyone, it's Karen at the Cool Tools Studio. I'm here today to demonstrate how to do a crushed opal inlay into metal. The process is pretty straightforward, but results in a really beautiful effect. And I personally can't wait to start incorporating this method in more of my projects now that Cool Tools sells crushed opal. They have a variety of colors, and I had a lot of fun mixing and matching and using multiple crushed opals in projects, as well as just using one color and really appreciating the way that they flash and reflect the light. Let's get started by taking a look at what we need for this process. This is optional but handy, an accelerator to speed things up, and then some CA glue. Today I'm going to be working with the thin and medium, but if you're doing something like a dimensional object or the band of a ring, thick would be handy to have as well. I'm also working with sandpaper, grit 240 up through 1200, a medium sanding stick, and a flash shiner to polish things up at the end. And I'm going to be showing you how to hand sand today, but if you do have a flex shaft, you can speed things up by using the sandpaper in a split mandrel. You also need a set of tweezers, a tough card, and then a clay pick. You could use a toothpick if you don't have one of these handy. You'll need some crushed opal to inlay, and then a respirator mask, safety glasses, and rubber gloves. And then optionally, you can top off your inlay with some resin, and that just adds a little bit more shine. And I'm going to be working with the UV resin and then a UV light to cure it. If you don't have any of these tools on hand and you'd like to purchase them, there is a link posted in the description below. For today's example, I'm going to be working with Royal Lavender, and then I'm going to be inlaying into a metal clay ring that I made. If you're interested in making this ring, there's a video that I already did where I inlaid enamel into this type of ring, but I walk people through how to make the ring itself as well. So that's out there for reference if you'd like. But we're going to start off with some of the medium CA glue. And I like to start off with the medium because it gives you a little bit of time to kind of scoot things if needed, and it's thick enough that things stay put. This bottle seems a good wear already, but I'm going to just drop one drop in and then kind of scoot it with the tip around to get to all the corners. And you do not need a lot of glue. I'm working on top of some paper here. That way when I inevitably miss my ring and things fall, I can just fold it in half and dump right back into my container of opal. You can either use tweezers or your fingers. For something like this, since it is a bigger space, it's easy enough to just use your fingers. On a project like this where I needed control with placement, I used tweezers. But to start off, I'm just going to dive on in. Please notice that I am wearing gloves, and it's not in the shot right now, but I'm also wearing a mask and safety glasses. It'd be a really bad day if you got this glue in your eyes, and you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself from fumes. So I'm just sprinkling and filling in this area. And when I was first experimenting with this technique, I made the mistake of putting in the opal on top of the medium glue and thinking, okay, I'm going to put more glue down and then sprinkle more opal in. But then as I sanded, there were a couple spots that I revealed that ended up just being glue. So I'm filling all the way to the top with opal, and then I'm going to go in with the thin on top. And that's going to glue all of the opal together. As I kind of tap to let things settle a little bit. And you don't want to overfill too much because then you're just giving yourself more work for sanding. But you do want to make sure that you are at or slightly above the level of your metal edge there. So it looks kind of like I need to scoot a little bit closer to my edges. So I'm going to come in with my tweezers to do that. And then at this point, I'm going to come in with the thin because it's going to really easily run down through all the crushed opal and adhere everything together. Probably going to only do 2 drops there. That might have been 3, but that's actually a little bit too much glue. 2 drops would have been ideal. It really doesn't take much, but you should see everything looking wet. If it doesn't look wet, then there isn't glue on it and it won't end up adhering. So at this point, to keep things clean, I'm going to scoot this off to the side. And now, since I do want to keep moving with this project and show you guys how to sand, I'm going to bring out some accelerator. And this you want to spray from about 6 inches away or so. And that's going to speed up the drying so you can go ahead and move right on into sanding. My glue is completely dry and I'm ready to move on by sanding. And I'm starting off with a sanding stick. It's a 220 grit on the coarser face. And you can either sand it like this or with something like this, especially a ring band, it's really easy to turn it upside down and sand. When you are sanding like this, you want to sand in a figure 8 motion, so you're sanding things evenly. If you're going back and forth, it's easy to kind of angle your piece or sand one side more than the other. So a figure 8 keeps things even. And I'm going to be using this more coarse level until the crushed opal is at the level of my metal. So at this point, there is no opal above the level of my metal, and I'm ready to move on to sanding. So overall, this process is really straightforward. I've got sandpaper starting at 240 and then getting progressively more fine in grit to 1200, and I'm just gonna work my way down. So you wanna put your sandpaper on a firm surface without any give. And again, I'm just gonna be working in figure 8s. And this is going to be removing the scratches from that metal face and also the opal. So I'm ready to move on down to my 320 paper. And unlike stoning enamel, you don't need to do this wet, but you should be wearing a mask because it does kick up some dust. And again, I'm just working my way down. And we'll check back in when I've made it through 1200, and I'll show you how you can polish them up. So I've made my way down through 1200, and again, I mentioned this in the products used, but if you're doing a larger project or something with a bigger face that you're sanding, you can use a split mandrel in your flexible shaft machine. And to do that, you just insert this probably is a little bit tall, but you just insert your sandpaper into and roll it around, and then it spins and does the sanding at a much quicker rate. And it's cool because the CA glue, it doesn't burn, and you're able to do that. Some resin inlays, you can't use high speed to sand because it'll end up kind of burning and discoloring, but the CA glue does not do that, so that's really nice. But we're just hand sanding and everything, and we're ready to move on with polishing. I'm going to be using a flash shiner for that. It's got 3 steps on this block, and it just creates a really nice finish. And I'm starting off with the gray over here. You can already see how it's brightening up both the opal and shining up the metal on the side there. And then I'm going to move on to the green. and then finish off with the white. And that's just a really simple way to bring things up to a really lovely polish and shine. Hit the sides too while I'm at it. And then at this point you might say, that looks great, I love the flash and the colors there, and I'm finished. Alternately, if you want, you can add some resin, and that does kind of bring up a little bit more flash and shine. So I'm going to demonstrate how you can do that if you would like to. So ready to move on with applying the UV resin. I'm still wearing my mask, I'm still wearing my safety glasses, I'm still working in a well-ventilated environment. I've got my gloves back on as well, and we're ready to go. This UV resin is really nice because you've got some time to negotiate it and move it around and make sure it's exactly where you want it before you cure it. I had experimented with using the CA glue itself to do a glossy coat on top, and the thin kind of ran all over the place, and the thick, without something being glued to it, took a while to dry. So I found that I had the best success by using UV resin. So I usually start off, I've got a tough card here that I'm using as a work surface. And to make sure I don't apply too much glue, I'm putting it on the tough card and then using a clay pick, you could use a toothpick if you don't have one, to pick up some glue and spread it on the opal face here. And you have two options at this point. You can put it really, really thin and just kind of make it be glossy, or you can put enough that it kind of domes and ends up looking a bit like a cabochon. I'm shooting for just a nice thin coat here. So I'm kind of scooting it from the middle outward and just trying to make sure I apply it to that opal surface evenly. And this opal already had incredible flash and color, but at this point the resin does kind of make it a little bit more reflective and shiny and increases the flash just a bit. And then this resin, once you're happy with where it's located and how it's looking, it takes 2 to 4 minutes to cure under a UV lamp. So I'm really happy with how that looks, so I'm going to take it to cure. And here we have the finished project. As I said before, it's really straightforward to execute, and I just love the flash and fire in this crushed opal. And I think this is probably one of my favorite rings I've made up to date. I really love the finished look of the crushed opal inlay, and I can't believe how easy it was to execute. I already have so many project ideas using crushed opal inlay, and I can't wait to see how you guys all incorporate this technique in your creative practice as well. Thanks for watching.